Welcome to Belly Up to the Blackboard, a podcast focused on the reality of teaching and other musings from and about professionals, hosted by Chris Munn and Justin Russell.
What's up, everybody? We are back. I believe this is episode 8, and today we have our first guest on the podcast, Craig Wederquist, a coworker of mine. He's here. We're hanging out in the garage recording this podcast. Justin is still on his adventure. Anything you want to tell anybody yet, Russ?
Yeah, no, not really. Just kind of living the dream still.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to start our episode like we always do. Give me just a second because we got our sound. We've got our sound going on here. All right, I had a little issue with the board there for just a second. So, all right, it's called Belly Up to the Blackboard, where you sit, you have a drink, you talk about educational issues, or whatever you really want. But, all right, Russ, what are you drinking?
Yeah, so I'm drinking a 10-year Tyrconnell. It's an Irish whiskey.
Nice. Just on ice, neat, with Coke.
Cubes. What do you got going?
So I put a little bit of ice in a glass, and I've got this Revelton honey whiskey from Osceola. So it's a local brand. It's very good. I know we tried some at Whiskey Fest last year. Fell in love with it. It's great, especially if you have a sore throat. And Weed is sober tonight.
Yes, I am. But if I was to have a cocktail, it would be a Pendleton's. I love Letterbuck, and I let the ice work.
Nice. Pendleton whiskey. You can't beat it.
Good one.
All right, so last week, our last episode, we talked about, it was World Teacher Day. And we talked about teachers that made influence on us, had an influence in our lives, whether that was teaching, whether that was just being a better person. And we kind of teased last time about what we're going to talk about this week. And it is maybe not so great teachers. We're not going to drop any names that aren't already in the news. We might have some stories here of teachers maybe we've crossed. Obviously, we will not say the names to protect the innocent or alleged.
The alleged, yeah.
The alleged teacher.
Yeah. So we talked about a teacher, and this is kind of, you always hear now how many teachers are missing. Like, we need more teachers. They're loosening the restrictions on who's going to be a substitute teacher, which is great, but that could also be a problem. You loosen those restrictions, and all of a sudden you've got teachers that probably shouldn't be teaching or around kids. And like I said, Justin talked about it last week. Just a quick blurb. There's a substitute teacher in Louisiana, and I don't know if you've heard this, but she was offering $5 to students to bully a kid. She was paying kids to bully another student. She's a substitute teacher in, like I said, Louisiana. She's a physical education teacher, and she was paying $5 for kids to tackle a kid onto the gym floor. Okay. Have you guys ever dealt with anything that insane? Weed?
No. I have seen a few, in 17 years, I've seen a few substitute teachers that were how do I say, more of a problem than they were an answer for that day. And but never to the extreme of targeting other students with a $5 bounty.
And
haven't seen it.
And I was thinking, man, $5, that's pretty cheap.
Yeah, that's a pretty cheap hit.
But then I realized it was not a high school, but this was a elementary / middle school.
Yeah.
So shoot, $5, you could get kids to do anything.
Well, yeah. But then on top of it, like, how much is the sub making that they could afford? Like, how many kids are in this class? Like, seriously, did the sub just snap and be like, all right, there's 15 kids. I'm only making $110 today as a sub. Like, I can only afford like 19 hits. Like, is that,
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like, screw it. This is like, what made it worth it to them? Like, 7 students, okay, $35. It's all good. Like, what did they like? You know, like, oh my gosh.
Let's see. I've got to get lunch today, so I can't. Okay, so subtract $10.
What did justice equate to for them? You know what I mean? Like,
I kind of want to know what the kid did to get the, to be on the radar so quick.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just she was arrested for allegedly, air quotes,
I can imagine,
encouraging students to bully another student and commit a battery. I thought it said bribery. Battery. So yeah, I haven't had anybody. I haven't dealt with any teachers. I do remember at least once we've had a substitute teacher that had to leave in the middle of the day. I think they snapped, dropped some F-bombs, but never
escorted him out.
Escorted out. Yep.
Out of the building.
Yeah, but never anything physical. I mean, that's just crazy. I mean, when you get to the point of doing that, and that's not even the worst one. The one that popped up on our radar, this was October 14th, so it hasn't even been a week. Teacher in East Chicago, Indiana. Okay, so an Indiana teacher is in custody after being accused of telling a student she had a kill list for people at the school. The student herself said she was on the list. So
it gets better as you read.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the kid went and told the principal and everything right away, but it was a 5th grade teacher. So how do you look at like a 9-year-old and be like, hey,
if you continue reading that, when the teacher's interviewed by the principal, admits to having a list. I mean, come on. Admits to it.
After action report. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, again, like, what gets somebody to that? Like, I could understand, and again, like, not condoning any of this, but like, there was an incident last year where a guy who had been teaching, he had won like 2 or 3 awards for teaching. Like, the community loved him. He'd been teaching for 20, 25 years, like, just a staple in this community. And he's on camera, and you see this kid come out of his classroom. He walks up behind him, the teacher does, points to the office or down the hall. The kid turns around, and the teacher grabs him and pushes him up against the wall, and the kid falls. Well, like, so everyone on social media obviously was like, that teacher needs to be fired, in jail, whatever. Well, come to find out, that kid, like, it had been like 2 or 3 months ongoing where this kid was making threats to the teacher, and the kid had made comments about the teacher's daughter. Like, not condoning this, but like I mean, like, what gets a teacher to the point they snap, right? Like, this is nobody goes into school going, this is the day, like, I'm gonna hit a kid, right? Like, I hope not. Like, at what point? Yeah, but at what point causes an adult person to just mentally say, this is enough? Like, I have no right or wrong compass anymore. Like, that's insane.
Fuck this! I'm out of here. I'm gonna get something on my way out here.
There's one old analogy that I've tried to live by my whole life, and in coaching, it's been true. When you come in and you're the old staff, the new staff, you hear, the kids are interviewed and they talk about how great the new staff is. I've been on the other end of that where I was part of the new staff and how great we were because we listened and we were, players, coaches. But I still live by this adage. You stick your finger in a glass of water, and when you pull it out, there's going to be some ripples. And that's the impact that you're having. And the teacher that you were talking about, he slammed the guy, had been there 23 years, had done so many great things. You feel like you're invested in that school and you're invested in that community, but you have to realize, you're not bigger than the situation. You're not going to overcome that. It's never going to go well for you. And there's a lot of things that I look at that situation and I say to myself, he got in his own way. And the first one is you need to get with your administrator. You need to get with people and you need to sort that thing out, because there's a number of things that can be done before it gets to that point. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate it got to that point. And you know, if you were sitting down 5 days later, the remorse that gentleman has is probably immeasurable, because of all the things that, you know, because of all the things. That's not what you want to be remembered for.
And then he's going to miss out on, and like you said, it's there's a joke, and I won't finish the whole thing, but you build a bridge, you know, they don't call you the bridge builder. You build a house, they don't call, you know, you do something with a sheep, and that's what they remember you for. But but it is, you know, you're only there for a limited amount of time. It is amazing after 17 years, you get to be feeling like you're part of the thing. But you realize 2 years after I'm retired, no one's going to know who I am. No one in that building. There's going to be Justin Russell's going to remember me. Chris Munn's going to remember me. You know, but I think of all the teachers that have left over 17 years, and I go, oh, yeah, that guy. Oh, yeah, that gal. Oh, my gosh, yeah. Oh. You only remember the really great ones that you built friendships with, or the ones that would walk around without shoes on.
My gosh.
And this is one of those ones we won't say names.
Yeah.
Had to get their desk cleaned off by the administrator.
Yeah. Just crazy stuff.
Well, it's just like anything. You remember an extreme positive and an extreme negative. Now, I will say this, though. You might have some students that you affected that it may not have been an extreme, but they will remember you
forever.
Yes. Yeah,
absolutely.
So that's where, with that guy that you brought up, Justin, from a year ago, you wonder what built up like into the classroom, because you had to send him out of the class, right? What built up?
And he had to be a great educator. I mean, like, obviously, if all these adults who were his students at one time were standing up for him, if the administration was saying like how much of a stand-up person he was and how involved, like all these kids that he's had, like, again, like what, and that is, I've said it before, and I mean, I haven't been in the game for forever, but I've said it before, like, I know what my limits are. And there were, and I'll be the first to admit, there were times, and you guys would agree to this because I've told you this, there were times over the last several years where I came in, I was like, I need to be talked off this cliff, right? Like, this kid, right?
He's getting close.
Right, yeah. And it just amazes me. But it brings me back, Weed, and this is what I want to ask you while you're here, is you have a very interesting perspective, I think, beyond what Chris and I have, because you lived through those times where the things that are happening now were at one time not considered bullying, were not considered abuse, right? Like there were things that you went to school with and actually probably began teaching with that today's standards would say those are completely wrong, right? Like illegal.
Oh, what went on in wrestling rooms and locker rooms in my era is just, it would be a scandal today. It's a yes. A guy, we used to have things called jock locks, guys that were supporters, and they'd take the freshmen and they would de-pants them and stick their legs through the jocks so that they couldn't get out of them. And then they would carry them out to the center of the floor where the cheerleaders were.
Oh, jeez.
And I mean, the coach would make the team run for,
Yeah.
And, the principal would come down and they put in a jock lock, and here we go, and the coaching staff would just run the heck out of the basketball team or the wrestling team,
whatever team did
it, and it was over with.
Yeah.
And then it became folklore, and then some, and I just remember all those kind of things that used to go on. And I mean, I remember going into the bathroom as a ninth grader, and it was pushing pennies. That was the big thing on the bathroom floor. And they'd make you put your hands behind your back and get on your knees, and you have to push the penny with your nose. Oh. And I'm the youngest of two older brothers. There is not a thing anyone at Urbandale High School could do to me that my brothers hadn't done to me at home. And I'm just like, well, bring it on. I mean, whatever you want to try, it's okay. Because, hey, I've learned how to lose to a bigger guy. I've gotten the crap kicked out of me a few times. It's not that big of a deal, and I will heal.
Right.
And, to be quite honest with you, I look at him, I'm kind of like, you're really not quite what my brother is. So I figure I got a 50-50 chance here. If I get a couple of haymakers going, I might be able to win this thing. And that's one of the things I remember when I was a senior.
Right.
I had a kid come up to me, not to spend more time on me, but this bullying thing. I remember walking into the bathroom. A friend of mine was trying to make a bunch of guys push pennies. And I said, fellas, get up off your knees and get out of here. I mean, whatever. And I remember that friend going, hey, man, this is a tradition. I go, it's a stupid tradition. I don't even know why you're doing it. Your brother protected you when you were their age.
Right.
You never had to push pennies because they'd have to deal with your older brother. So I don't know why you thought it's some kind of tradition that you need to keep carrying on. I wasn't into that bullying stuff, and I wasn't into all that crap because I'd kind of been on the other end of it. And thank God my father was a decent human being who thought bullies weren't very good people. So,
but I couldn't imagine. We've all been coaches, and we're all still coaches. Can you imagine in today's paperwork writing that down, the jock deal?
Oh,
coaches. Can you imagine in paperwork calling somebody's parents and saying, your son was part of a jock strike?
Yeah. And you had to explain exactly what they did.
Could you imagine the amount of therapy, the therapy that would be offered, the assistance, the kumbaya, meeting either before school, after school. Listen, I think there is real bullying, and I think it can. I think it's one of those things that can be very, very detrimental to young people. But I also know this.
Absolutely.
Every time that I've ever had to confront what I consider a bullying situation, it's stopped. Because when you get into somebody's face and you say, listen, I don't care who's right, who's wrong, who's doing what, who says what, this is going to stop. And I don't care if it's you or him. And I put the blame on both. And pretty soon what I find is that the bullying is no longer a problem. And then I coach the kid that took the bullying. Hey, if he sends you a text, she sends you a text, if there's any kind of email, if there's anything on in the hallways that's going on, let me know so I can get the video of it.
Yeah, get it taken care of. And
and
paper trail.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden I sit back and I say to the other guy, hey, listen, I'm telling you what, if he's mouthing off, I'm going to have the video from the hallways. You let me know if he sends you a text, if he's, doing anything, if he, puts notes or anything. It's amazing how all of a sudden you call them out and it's done. It's over with.
Yeah. And the problem is sometimes that, how it's always like the second person gets caught. Sometimes there's a kid, and I'm not saying that like this is all instances of bullying, but there are sometimes where a kid's just poking, and all of a sudden,
absolutely,
the person's getting tired of it, and now all of a sudden they're the bully when, they've restrained, but then they've like, I'm done, I'm going to deal with this. And then who's really the bully in that? And like I said, this isn't a majority, but it is something that does happen too of, a kid's doing the little things and all of a sudden kid stuffs him in a locker. Not that happens anymore because I don't think any of these kids can fit in lockers.
I had a kid ask for a locker today. It was incredible.
Yeah,
he said, hey, can I put my coat in your room? And I said, why don't you get a locker? And he goes, we got lockers? It was like the coolest thing. We got lockers? I mean, I was like, yeah, we got lockers.
Yeah, those metal things that you walk by?
Yeah, you walk by. So he got a locker. He was the happiest guy in the world. It's funny that I want to make a point because it's funny that Chris mentions that situation with someone who's very annoying. I'm working with a kid right now who is a junior, who is one of the most annoying kids at school. I had a very frank discussion about the way he deports himself in the hallways, about the way he goes about working in classes, his interaction. And I just brought all these things out that he does. And it has been amazing what I've seen in the last 2 days of school from him. He is still over-medicated to the point I can't believe parents will allow. And of course, I don't know exactly what he's taking, but I think he's over-medicated. And him and I had a conversation. I said, I said, it's not in school that I'm worried about. It's that next step in your life. People that don't know you, people that don't care for you. What's going to happen to you out there in the real world? And it was amazing how he really articulated what possibilities could really happen to him.
He's able to self-reflect.
Oh my, yeah. It was unbelievable. He goes, well, I'm a pretty annoying person. And if I don't, mind myself, I could be in trouble.
Yeah.
Because he knows he can't defend himself. And I said, exactly. And I said, you got to realize something. I'm not saying these things to you to downgrade. I want you to be aware that you need to start working on these. And these things have to be worked on incrementally.
Yeah, you can't just flip a switch and change.
Yeah, you just can't change. And sometimes it's better for you to be silent and just let the moment go than think you're going to come back with a smart aleck answer like you did when you were in 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th grade.
Yeah.
It's got to change, and it's been amazing. And the amount of work I've gotten out of this student in the last 2 days has been incredible.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those things where, like, the kid says something to somebody else. They don't like it. So then they say something back to them, and then they start calling for a teacher saying, this kid said something to me. Well, there's something that preceded that caused this kid to respond to you, and now you're calling because somebody said something to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that happens.
So that brings up a great point. I'm going to ask both of you this then, as we circle back to kind of that quote unquote bad teachers. The first part of it is you guys bring up a great point. So I think over time, what you were kind of indicating was teachers have went from facilitating learning, whether that was how to respond and act in society or how to think with academics, to not just facilitating, but now we have to role model. And what you were talking about, Weed, was you were modeling that self-reflective practice, right? When you were asking them the questions like, hey, why do you do this? And what do you think would happen? That to me is more of a role modeling. And then Chris, you bring up a great point with coaching as far as both of you had mentioned that modeling communication, right? Like when something happens, you have to feel safe enough to go to somebody and communicate that. Talk to a little bit about how that's really changed the way you teach from the beginning, because I know both of you started out kind of like me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but both of you started out thinking there is one way that this educational process should be, and you had a goal. But if you think it's changed over time because of the way you've had to model being a human being now versus something else, like talk about that a little bit.
Well, Justin, one of the things that I don't think I've really changed my style. I really don't. I'm fortunate. I'm a bigger person. So I have a presence. I have a physical presence when you walk into the room. People would look at me and say, I'm probably not in a good frame of mind. When kids get to know me, they realize that I am the same every single day. And I'd like to think that
you're constant.
That the first day I was on a job to yesterday, I've been the same person. Now listen, I've got a lot more tools in my tool chest than I had when I got back into this thing in 2006. But the one thing I think I've always done a very, very good job, and Chris has seen this, is I can diffuse a situation as well as anybody in the world. Just
and
by
not physically.
No,
verbal,
not at all. And because and I think that those things are what is my strength with kids, because they know I have a foundation. They know that I'm not just making this stuff up. I'm not just, I'm, I hate to use the term, I'm real, but, you are who
around with your medals on your chest, right? Like you're not saying like, I have 25,000 kids I've graduated and I'm Craig Wederquist and I'm gonna, I'm gonna shape you out.
What I've done in my personal life and in my professional life is I don't use that. But here's the thing, I'm not afraid to tell a kid I don't know. I sent a kid. He brought a math problem to me. I looked at it. I said, it looks good, but I'll tell you what. Here's a note. Go up and see Coach Mudd. And he goes, well, what happens if he's teaching? I said, well, go in there and say, excuse me, Mr. Wederquist sent me down, and just say he asked if you could check these two problems on this test. And so he went up there, and I said, well, how'd it go? And he's sitting back there. He goes, yeah, it went great. He said, I got him right. And I said, good. Did you ask him any questions? And no, he just confirmed that the way I did it was right, and the way I got from point A to point B was right. And I said, great. But I wasn't afraid to tell him, hey, I don't know. I don't know how to do that. And I think, in the long run, I think a teacher builds a better rapport, and that word gets out there. Hey, why are you giving Mr. Wederquist crap? I mean, he's not the problem, and some of the worst girls that I've ever had, they just can't get enough of me when they're gone. They'll email me. They'll when they're back to say, they gotta find me. They gotta say hi. How you doing? What's going on?
Yeah. Well, and especially with with high school students, you can't BS a kid. The kid knows when somebody's lying to him.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So now if you try to lie to them and then they find out you're wrong, all that trust that you've built up, it's gone.
Yeah.
But if you say, hey, I don't know, let me check, I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Because then they're like, okay, admits he doesn't know. I don't feel so bad because I don't know. And then they're going to check and get the answer. But if you BS it and all of a sudden this kid's wrong or gets something wrong, that trust goes out the window. Oh. And you could build years to, you could have a kid that's a senior, you've built 3 years of trust, all of a sudden something happens.
Yeah.
You lose that trust.
Absolutely. I have a kid. This was it was about 4 years ago. We're going through E2020 and I start doing a credit check, and I recognize that he had already passed this class. It wasn't, I just missed it. It wasn't in the same, year. It was in different semesters, and I just missed it. And I counted it once rather than twice, and I had him going. He probably had 30% done. And I had to call him in at the start of class. Hey, come here, bud. Listen, this is my mistake. You put all this time in, done this. You don't need this class. This is totally my mistake. I'm really sorry. I want you to know. And you know what the kid said to me? He goes, well, at least you found out before I finished it. And I said, I appreciate that. Let's go on to the next thing. And I'll tell you what, I think that's an example of just being truthful with somebody, making sure that they know you have their back and their best interest, and being.
Yeah. And part of that, part of your consistency though, it sounds like, is you went and fixed it though, right? Like you didn't just say, oh, my bad. And that's kind of what separates you from being a from being a good or bad teacher, right? Is the fact that you said, let's make this right.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't like, oh, you got to do the class again. I made a mistake. Well, sorry.
Yeah. It's
you made it right. Yeah.
And you owned up to your mistake. You didn't say, well, hey, why didn't you tell me that you already did this? And, turn it on the kid.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's exactly right. It is. And that's like when you have a kid for so long, like some of the kids I've had now that graduated last year, I've had since they were in 7th grade.
Yeah.
And there's that rapport you can build to where you can not that they're peers of yours, but you can joke around. I can joke around with this kid. We can give each other crap.
Yep.
And that's all it is. It's just fun. Nobody's taking hard. Nobody's taking it to heart. We know that, but sometimes
It's all in good fun, and it doesn't lose its boundaries.
exactly. And there's sometimes where like you're joking around, and then kids like joking around back, but you're like, and you may not say it right in front of everybody. Like you call them, hey, we're joking back and forth. You're kind of pushing a line, and then they get it.
Yeah.
But and again, that's one of those things that you build the trust with kids,
And Chris, I've seen that. There's a kid that, and you know who I'm talking about. Was the hardest working young man that you probably ever had in the years you've been teaching. He comes back at least once a year to see you in the spring.
yeah,
Anytime he's in town, he comes by to see you. I mean, that's that relationship. I mean, he just thinks the world of you, and that's just that's a credit to you and what you did for him, going through one of his struggles and making sure that he could get this stuff done.
yep. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I mean, it's a good thing to see. And currently, you've got a young man who you just did a credit check. We thought we were going to be done with credit recovery. We actually have 2 more classes, for crying out loud. So,
Yep. But that's the thing. Like, okay, we thought it. We were like, hey, let's take a look at this. Okay, it's not. You still have this. We went through emailing other teachers. Hey, did they get this credit? I know I talked to Justin today about it, texting it. You know who this kid is, because I texted you today about the credit, and emailing other teachers and checking that stuff. It's like, hey, it's not there. We got to get it done.
yeah, absolutely.
And the kid understands. He's like, I didn't do it. And here's the thing: is like that's a kid that, and I've said, hey, you dicked around for 2 years. You
Sure.
didn't show up to school, and he's old enough now as a senior to own up to it and know, like, I put myself in this position.
Right.
And that's the nice thing about having some of these kids that I had at the middle school is that I'll tell them, I go, I told you guys as 7th and 8th graders, yes, these classes don't quote unquote matter because you don't get credit for it.
Right.
But if you don't build that skill of getting this stuff done and passing, when you get to the high school and you get credits for it, you're going, if you don't get credit and you don't do the work, you're going to put yourself in a bad spot. And a couple of girls I talked to last year that were seniors that started to scramble a little bit, I said, I told you guys this 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
I go, and they know. They're like, yeah, I know. I said, you don't listen until you're in that spot. And I can tell you I told you so.
Yeah. And that's the last thing you really want to do as a teacher.
Yeah, you want them to listen,
Yeah.
but it's just like with our own kids. Sometimes they don't learn until it's too late, or they're they got to learn it for themselves.
Yeah. When it becomes relevant to them.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yep.
But hey, at least you didn't tell a 5th
what I-
grader that you had a kill list for them, and they're on that list.
Well, I mean, to a teacher's credit, they were serious when they admitted it. Like they had, yeah. I mean, they owned up to it, I guess. But
Well, yeah, she had
what
a.
I hear you,
Go
what
ahead.
I hear you guys. I just like what I hear you guys saying though is to our new teachers that are listening. It really sounds like dependability matters more than likability. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
So it's better to be dependable than someone's friend, correct?
I think you got to walk into the school every day and have consistency and continuity in your room, with the environment in your room, with your demeanor. I mean, if your dog gets run over 5 minutes before you come to school, you don't call in sick. You come to school, and you got to act like your dog didn't get run over. And I know that's hard,
Right.
but it's not.
is.
It's not fair to do it the other way. It's just not fair to do
No.
it the other way because, I was doing some CPI training today, and I'm going to get my CPI certification, and
You have to do it tomorrow.
yeah, do it tomorrow.
Yeah, at the DO.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. So, but
So much for teacher work day.
one of the things that they just keep hammering on is the fact that you got to remain calm. Common sense stuff. You can't take things from a person that's irrational and make it personal and put any stock in it. You just got to let it roll off your back. And I'm glad I have a personality that I can do that. I don't have to be right.
Yeah.
I don't have to win, because ultimately I do win. Ultimately I get what I want from the student, and it's in their best interest because ultimately they're graduating.
Yeah.
And that piece of paper opens a door, doesn't close a door. And that's the, the thing. And I would tell any young teacher, hey, keep a steady stream, keep going forward, keep pushing through the tough stuff. Make sure you find that group of people that can support you. And don't be afraid to admit, hey, I tried this, and I tried this. Hey, have you tried this? Well, you kind of did. Well, let's do it this way. There's a lot of things, and I think people have an ego. They don't want to ask for help. I think they're worried about, administrators, what they think of them. You can't have an ego on this thing. Yeah. And you got to stand for something. I mean, you have expectations in your room. Make them realistic. Live by them every day. Don't let someone that you really, really like, that really does everything, don't change those expectations. Don't change them. Don't change them. They got to be the same for everybody. For that kid you really like and that kid that you just can't barely work with.
Yeah. And with that is, don't take it personal. Like,
absolutely.
Two things is like, okay, one, we don't know what happened before the kid walked through the door. So they might already be tuned up, ready to go. And you may hand them homework and then they just start dropping F-bombs. Like, I'm not doing this shit, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
You know what? It's a lot of times it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about something else. You're just the first target.
It's an iceberg.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only a third of it is being seen.
And the other thing is too, is like when kids, like I joke around with kids or kids make a comment, and not that it's to where I need to like write them up or things like that. They just make a joke or something. And the kid's like, are you going to let them say that? I'm like, do you really care? Do you think I care what this kid thinks? Do you think my world is affected by what this sophomore says? I go, I could care less what he thinks. It's not, I mean, that's the other thing is like, if
minimize the situation.
I'll forget about it. Yeah, I'll forget about it in about a month. Yeah, it what's it matter to me?
Yeah, that doesn't change my world. It's not, and that's what some teachers, they take it personally because it's directed at them, which really it's, like I said, it's the first target. You're that first class or whatever it may, or, the class after lunch and somebody sent them a Snapchat or whatever and told them they look like dog shit or something. Who knows? But, so they're already.
Which is actually said a lot of times. Yeah.
Well, only to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
you send me that daily,
listen,
so what does it matter?
I do.
I do want to make the point. I do want to make the point that I had a situation where this year where, I needed help. I needed help in the middle of a testing period. We were doing MAP testing, and I had an issue with 4 students. And I had to change that whole dynamic. And I was very fortunate that the counselor was there for me. The principal was there. I explained my situation. I got total support. And, it was something that doesn't happen to me very often. So I want those young teachers out there that might be listening. Hey, I'm not saying I don't come into conflict with students and almost lose my head. That is going to happen. But I have a circle of people I can go to that I can circle my wagons with. And that's very, very important.
Yeah. You don't want to be on an island as a young teacher or even as a veteran teacher.
No.
You need to have those people there.
Yeah. Whether it's, we're doing PLCs. I mean, I think that's the first place you start developing in those. And whoever heads those PLCs needs to make sure that happens. Yeah. We were talking to a teacher right before the podcast.
Yeah.
Her frustration, and she wants to, maybe just keep her head down and do her gig. And I think more conversations with that. She needs to reach out and keep going because she's a great teacher.
Yeah. And go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Russ.
So I was gonna say that kind of goes with the duality, or I always say teachers they have multiple personalities. Wouldn't you agree? We are completely different people. And this goes with what you were saying, about dependable in the classroom, like 5 minutes before you walk in the door, you hear your dog die. Like, we wear so many personalities. When I'm in the classroom, I always try to remind myself, like, you are this person, right? When I go home, I'm no longer that classroom teacher, right? Like, I have to separate those. When I go into one of your classrooms and I'm ready to vent, like, I'm a completely different person at that point than if we were out at the bar having a few beers. Like, but I do think that it comes back to really what you guys were talking about, which is not only is it not about you when that kid has an outburst like that or has a situation. I would add, though, that sometimes it may be about you. And being in behavior as long as I have, I've learned that a lot of times, and not every time, but a lot of times when a kid does misbehave, kind of like, Chris, you remember when we got called, what was it, something bitch asses or whatever?
Yeah.
White bitch asses. Yeah. In reflection, I don't even think that was about insulting us. I think that was about seeing what we would do, if we would still support that student at the end of the day, or if we were ready to push that student away. Because you think about those students who constantly have people give up on them, right? Like the moment they fail at something, or they call somebody a white bitch ass or something else, like,
I think it's weird because you're Asian.
Like,
well, yeah, kids like that want to blow a hole in their own boat. I mean, they do.
Yeah,
because they think they're going to be disappointed if they put their faith in, and they have no faith.
Yeah.
So they strike out at the person that cares the most, and they want to see if you'll come back. And it's
absolutely
it's the trauma and the using all the big words that we have now for difficult
but to a new
kids.
Teacher, but to a new teacher, that is very important to understand that you have to come back, right, the next day, unbothered, like you said, Chris. Like, does it matter what a freshman or sophomore kid says about me or insult? No. Like, tomorrow when I come back, you're still going to have a lesson. You're still going to have these boundaries and expectations. I'm still going to celebrate with you when you do great. I'm still going to call you out when you're not doing what you're supposed to. But at the end of the day, at the end of 180 days, I'm going to be, like you said, Weed, the same person in 17 years from when I started.
I'd like to
still
think.
Doing the thing. Yeah, I'd like to think, right? Yeah.
Well, you hit that reset button at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And some of the kids, and this is where, even as a young teacher, I caught myself after a while, and I learned this about a particular student, is some students live in so much chaos that if something is going well, they have to do something. They don't know how to handle.
Right. They got to blow a hole in their own boat. They got to stir it up.
They got to do something
because it's unsettling
to throw back into chaos. Yeah. Like, and that's where with a kid, and I hate to say it, but it's like, it was hard to I started to learn, like, it's hard to compliment this kid because as soon as you're doing a great job, keep it up, they would do something to fuck it up because they couldn't handle, a calm water. Yeah, they're always in a storm.
How many times coaches have you told a kid, "Hey, you're almost ready to exit your IEP goal," or Coach Weed, like, "Hey, you're doing an outstanding job on the C2020. You're almost ready to get this credit," and then like a week later, they are doing the worst that any student could ever do.
Yeah. I've had instances of that, I'm sure.
Yeah, because we've had kids that don't want to exit their IP. They're like, I don't want to. So they'll bomb a probe.
Yeah.
One of those things for those kids that if you ever compliment them, they go south on you. I found when I just make sure that I'm saying good morning, how you doing, talk about everything else in their life except the academic part of it.
Yeah.
And I find that they could that's enough for them. That's enough.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's enough. You validated me as a human being, and I'm good to go, and I keep moving.
Yeah.
I ought to write a book on that. I'd probably start a whole new initiative for the school districts and make millions of dollars. Then I would go to a beach somewhere with drinks with little funny hats and
Well, shit. Now you could Zoom from your beach house and give your presentations and collect your $10,000.
My only problem is I'd rather go to Tahoe Donner area and be up in the snow in the mountains.
Yeah, exactly.
Get a bearskin rug and do my deal there.
There you go.
Have your chest hair hanging out.
Yeah. Boy.
Yeah, it's there's kids like all in the, and then I don't even have, but there's kids like in the hallway, and I've done this. Is like, okay, I say good morning to kids. I stand in the hallway and say good morning, and there's some kids that say good morning. There's some kids that completely ignore you, and then to me sometimes that's a game. Like you continue to say good morning until you get a response, and then eventually you'll get the kid to say good morning to you first.
Now, guys, I've told you my story when I first came to Sadell.
Let's hear it.
I was out in the hallway. I said good morning for 8 weeks before I got a person to say good morning to me first. Not respond. I got kids to respond to me in 8 weeks.
Yeah.
I'd say good morning. They'd say good morning. But it took 8 weeks, 2 months. We went in August, September, October. Hi, Mr. Wederquist. It took that long for a kid to respond before I could say. Yeah. That was amazing to me.
There's some kids.
Consistency.
There's some kids that you say good morning, and then they look at you, and it's like you've scrambled their brain.
Yeah,
because they don't know how to react.
Yeah, they're like, "You're what?
Huh?
They look like the RCA dog. What?
Yeah. They don't know how to respond. Nobody said good morning to them before.
Yeah,
they don't know what to do.
Oh, there are so many social
misfits.
Yeah. Yes, boy,
social misfits.
Well,
thank you for the save.
I got you. I knew. Yeah. I knew where you were going.
Yeah,
But to go with that, coach, is how many times have you had players or kids come out for athletics that you're coaching just because you said hello? You know what I mean? Like you were that constant in their life. Like I'm sure you could name shitloads of names now of kids who just came out because it was you.
Justin, we had a kid who came out as a senior, got hurt.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Apologized for getting hurt, was the greatest kid, invited me to his wedding, which I unfortunately wasn't able to go to. But you know how I really got to know him? It's right before Christmas break. He's sitting there in the office. I walk in. I say, "Are you a convicted felon?" And he goes, "Well, I don't know, but I threw battery acid on a kid." That's what he said. He goes, I said, well,
"That's your first meeting."
That was my first meeting with him. Yeah. And I said, "You threw battery acid on him?" And he goes, yeah, I really don't like him. I said, I gather that. So it looks like you're going to, and I said to him, I go, "So it looks like you're going to be on sabbatical for a few weeks. When do you come back?" And, he said, "Well, I'm not really sure. I'm going to find that out." Pretty pragmatic about it. So when he came back, that kid said hello to me every doggone day. I mean, hey, Mr. Wederquist, how you doing? How you doing, bud? Yeah. You're good to see you, man. Any troubles today? No troubles today. And it was funny. But that next fall, he came out and was a great.
Worked hard. Smart kid.
Smart. Knew what he was doing. He didn't have skills, but he had a great stance. I couldn't believe he had a good stance, played hard.
Yeah.
We're playing there, and he got into the game, and he got himself hurt. And the first thing he says when we get out there, we ask him how he's doing, he goes, "Gosh, Coach, I'm really sorry."
I think he tore his ACL.
Oh, yeah.
Tore his knee.
Yeah. He was,
Yeah.
He was trashed.
Oh,
yeah.
Jeez.
I'm just like, wow.
But just from that one random or chance encounter comment you make, that you may pass a kid every now and then, but you make that, and then all of a sudden it builds a relationship.
Yeah.
Another good one you get is when you get two brothers and you fire one brother. One brother you just aren't going to work with. And you're not going to sit there and engage with him because he's just so immature you can't deal with him, and you don't have to interact with him, so you don't. But you do with his brother.
You have to tell me this one online. I don't know after we get done.
Yeah, but I'm with his brother, and he comes into my room, doesn't have me, but he comes in, fist bumps me, talks about the things he's going to do, and I can just tell it just drives his little brother crazy. Just drives him crazy because he'd set me on fire if he could get away with it, which is fine because I'm like Chris. I don't care if he doesn't like me. I could care less if I don't get a Christmas card or get invited to his birthday party, you know. But his brother thinks I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. I mean, he comes out of his way, fist bump. Hey, how you doing, Coach Wade? How you doing? Hey, how you doing, man? Good. Love those shoes. I always tell kids, love your shoes. Oh, yeah, I just got these.
Oh, well, I think we've given some people some ideas of what not to do. You know, you don't make a kill list, and then you don't share it with the student who's on that kill list.
I believe the correct thing is you need to know the Constitution and know that you can claim the Fifth Amendment. You do not need to incriminate yourself as well.
Yeah.
I'd like to plead the Fifth on that.
Speaking of though, like,
did you say this? I'd like to plead. What's that?
Did you see the news story about the bus driver? She dropped the kids off like 5 or 6 blocks from the school because they were like so outrageous behaved wise. She just stopped the bus, told them to get off, and made them walk the last mile or so to school.
Okay, what grade? What level?
It was elementary.
Oh, that's tough. I can see it as a high school kid.
Well,
but,
you know, listen, again, guys, again. I'm not trying to be the deal. I get her frustration, but she needs to drive to the school. There's a procedure in place.
Yeah.
And here's where the administration has to. I'd have every one of those parents at that school because those kids weren't going to be in there. Yeah. They were going to be in detention for the rest of the day.
Yeah. So there's 2 things. One, like you said, she needs to be able to.
She needs to do
take
a
a
dang
breath
job.
and do that.
Yeah.
2, there's a screw loose and like all of a sudden it just broke with what these kids did. I mean, all of a sudden like you go split personality and get out, but like you said, it's you got to be able to get.
You got to do your job. You got to do your job. You got to go and you get. Well, there's a procedure in place. A kid screws up on the bus. You get them to school. You make sure they're safe. You report it, and then the administration has to follow through. And they have. There has to be some.
Hopefully,
well, they have to.
Yeah,
they have to because there's a safety issue there. And you've got to recognize that safety issue, and you've got to recognize the fact that those kids need to be taught that this is not acceptable. This is not part of the expectation. You are jeopardizing everybody on that bus.
And you hope that administration in that district
I would sure hope so.
And you don't know the background. We don't know, so we really can't say there. But all right.
So you know what I'm gonna ask here, Chris, right? I say this at the end of every podcast is, so since we kind of, our objective is to help new teachers in the profession, knowing that this episode is all about not what to do or what separates good teachers from bad teachers. And we hit on a couple points. Let's do a round table. What advice would you give new teachers on what would make them, quote unquote, grow to be a good teacher or a great teacher?
Okay, based on what we talked about.
Okay.
You want to go first?
Yeah.
First of all, I think you need to surround yourself with support within the school. And I think you have to have consistency and continuity in your classroom. And that is not easy to do, but I think it is vital to keep your sanity and to achieve what you want being an educator.
Would you say it's good to have a mixture, like some negative, some more experience, some new?
Listen,
or would you say like?
I think everybody's got to find that support that's for them, Justin. I don't think you need everybody that thinks it's rainbows and unicorns, and I don't think you need Sally and Paul Sadsack. I think what you need. It's my belief you need someone who's going to speak to you in a real way and say, hey, listen, I get where you're coming from, but it's really not that big of a deal. I mean, you need someone who's going to be honest with you. I mean, if I got to be honest, and people don't know all our dynamics, but I feel like I get spoken the truth if I talk to you, talk to Chris. You know, I think I get the truth. And there's some people that I consider really good coworkers and get along with great, but I'm not going to ask them. There ain't no way. They're going to, you know, they're going to rainbow me like, yo, you're the greatest thing since last breath.
Keep doing what you're doing. You're wonderful.
You're wonderful. That's a powerful statement. That was my trigger word when I came into education. Oh, that's powerful. Oh my God, that's powerful. Oh, did you hear what that person? That's powerful. I'm looking around going, "Evening Christmas." I don't know if that's really powerful or if that person had a few beers before they came into PD, but you know, whatever. I mean, gee, Christmas. You need someone to say, "Listen, I get where you're coming from. Here's, you know, the way you explain the lesson to me. I can see how there's a little bit of, you know, there's a drop off here, man." But I'm saying that from the standpoint that I don't sit there and confess it's your fault. You know, I'm not. Teaching is hard. Teaching is hard, and it takes time. And all of us are in a totally different atmosphere than a regular gen ed classroom. I mean, I'm at risk kids. Chris and you were in special education and with certain, you know, different levels.
We taught special education. We were in. Chris maybe was.
You
instructed. I got that. But my point to you is, I mean, it's a little different, and I think that young teachers have to find that support. They've got to have consistency and continuity every day with their demeanor, and you know the expectations need to stay put, and they don't need, you know, you don't need to die on the cross every day. You just have to enforce the expectation and make them realistic. You know.
Yep. Good.
Russ, what about you?
Chris?
Oh, okay, I'll go. So mine builds on what Weed said is, and mine, I hope I haven't said this one before, but it's hitting that reset button every day, because a kid could have what's crazy is like a kid could have a bad day, cuss you out, walk out, do whatever. Next day they show up, nice as can be, because it's the least thing in their mind, right? So it's hitting that reset button with the kid every day, and it is hard sometimes. It is hard to let things go, depending on what the kid did or how many days. If they're consistently an asshole in your class, I mean, it's hard to hit that reset button. And I hate the word self-care because that gets thrown around so much. I hate self-care, but you've got to be able to separate the school day, you know. And it's a little. I think it's hard. I'd say it's easier with family because now you have family, like you're going home to something. But I think it's harder because you don't want to carry home that agitation you had during that anger or whatever it is. And like now your kid spills milk and it was an accident, but you jump on their ass because you're already fired up and wound up from the day. But you got to be able to try to separate yourself from school. And we talked about this one of our first episodes of how we used to come in the weekend and things like that. Now it's like you got to step away, leave the computer at work, leave the work at work, and separate so you can reset. So that's mine is you got to try to reset every day, and you know whatever you enjoy, make sure you do that at home. Don't think about work. Leave your computer home, even if it's not getting stuff graded until the next day or 2 days. It's more important for that separation from work. So that's mine. Yeah. Russ, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, Weed, you made a great point about consistency and dependability, but I also want to add, like, there, and you would agree, Weed, because we've talked about this before, like, there has to be the understanding that it's okay to say no as well, right? Like, if you are rocking it in your classroom, you got kids excelling, an admin or another teacher come and they say, hey, can you help me out? Hey, can we add this to your plate? It's okay to say no because you know that it's going to ruin what you have going on in your classroom, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That's part of that
and
like
it
quiet
doesn't make you a
quitting we
bad
talked
teacher.
about.
Yeah, but it doesn't make you a bad teacher either.
No.
Knowing that you can't be dependable and consistent if you add another 2 or 3 things, right? Like I think that's important to know. And I love what you said, Weed, on that was no matter what, it's just that consistency, and kids pick up on that, especially high school kids.
Oh yeah.
And so that's huge. And Chris, what you're talking about, like, I love how you were talking about separation, because and for those of you out here, it's not like me, myself, and Irene with Jim Carrey, where you're like 3 different personalities there. It really is about, like, when I'm at home and my kids want to play with me, and we talked about this, Chris, like, I can't be Justin the teacher at that moment. Like, I have to shut that off. Same thing at school. Like, if my kid has a big, like, competition this evening, I can't be Justin the dad at school. Like, you just can't do both. And so I love how both of you said that. I guess my piece would be, one, teaching is more forgiving than people want to admit to. If I'm an elementary teacher and a kid leaves first grade not knowing the difference between red and blue, like, I can't beat myself up about that, right? Like, saying, okay, 3 kids just went to 2nd grade and they don't know the difference between 2 colors. Like, I'm a horrible teacher. Like, that's not how it works. But at the same token, like, if I have a sophomore who's behind 2 math credits or a math credit already, like, I can't beat myself up and say that's on me. Like, what's the game plan? That has to be the thought process. And then the second one is that you can't measure your success as a teacher on state testing standards, on data that comes in. Like, this is a great example is, I know a lot of school districts every week review data. Like, oh, we have a 80% graduation rate, or our kids are only reading in the 4th percentile, or we're like 900th in the state on math scores. Like, I think the way you be, and Chris, you said this, self-care, I think part of that has to be is each day has to be a measurement of success. And this goes with what you were saying, Weed, is if my goal when I park my car in the parking lot is, today I'm going to make sure that I get through my lesson and that these bottom kids get to hear, and this kid who's excelling, I make sure they get the extra work that they need. Like, I have to make sure that is what I measure my success on. Because I think too many teachers, and I was there too, get burnt out by saying, oh, I have success, but my evaluation scores are low, even though my kids are excelling, right? Like, and I think there has to be an understanding on that can't be the measurement of my self-worth, right? Like, kind of like that sophomore who calls me whatever, like, that can't be my measure of self-worth as a person. So I would say those 2 points as a beginning teacher.
Yeah, and I think with, like you just talked about, with not being tied to the evaluation, and maybe this is just me, or maybe it's just as I get older, is, yes, they come in and they want to see what's going on in your classroom, but I used to get so, like, I don't want to say amped up, but, like, nervous for somebody to come into my room. I'm like, because they're judging me as a teacher.
That day, you have your lesson plans all written out.
You get your dog and your pony show going.
I think that'd be an excellent another podcast, evaluations.
Yeah.
Because I tell you what, I'm serious. I have a lot of, I have a lot of opinions and a lot of observations and a lot of considerations that I think need to be looked at when you do an evaluation. And I also look at, I just got the person that's doing that evaluation. I think that there is a real, there's a real dynamic with that, and it's so subjective. And I think it's, they try to say it's not, but we could do a whole hour.
Sounds like he's coming back.
I will come back for evaluations.
Yes.
Perfect.
I will come back for evaluations.
Well, we better wrap this one up then, and we can do that maybe next week. We'll see. We'll kick that around. Before we end, Russ, where you at, bud?
We are right now currently in Raton, New Mexico. And then we are actually headed to Amarillo,
Rat Bin,
Texas.
Mexico.
Raton, New Mexico. It's just
I'm sorry. I thought you said rat bin.
where the bear flows like honey.
Aspen.
Yeah. Oh, Queen, you wouldn't believe the other day. Chris asked where I was, texted me. I said I was like somewhere in another state, and Chris goes, "That's the wrong state, dude." And I go, "Oh shit!" Like,
Yeah, you said you were in Colorado, so I searched the city, and it pops up Arizona. I go, "You mean Arizona?" He's like, "Yeah, I don't know where I'm at right now." So you're in New Mexico.
All I envision is all your kids wearing headbands, listening to Can Heat, dancing around a fire at night,
Smacking a tambourine.
Yeah. Going to the
say-
country.
I will say, as an educator, you guys know me very well, and for whoever's listening, I think most of you know me pretty well. I always said I'd never be one of those parents who did education with their kids through like iPad. And Jesus, we do car rides now, and that's all she does. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I'm the same way. We
Things
try to limit
Yeah.
it to like if we're going on longer than like a 40-minute drive.
yeah,
But yeah, sometimes it's hard.
it is.
All right, so you're in New Mexico, heading to Texas,
New
right?
Mexico, headed to Texas. Yep.
Okay.
Friday we're headed to a high school football game in Texas. So I've always wanted to do that. I have the chance to do it now, and so we're gonna go do it.
Nice. Hey, did you do your job since you've got all this free time in the world and write up our blurb for the end?
I'm gonna freestyle this. So
Ooh.
what was the blurb about again?
I like it. I'll be quiet. I'm gonna mute my mic and mute Weed's mic, so we won't interrupt you. Go ahead and end it, and then we'll
What
play.
was the blurb about?
Okay. How about if I do this? Okay. So
You
Justin,
knew I wouldn't do it.
the guy that has all the time in the world, didn't do it. Here, take this. I'll freestyle it here, and then you can create something. Okay, and then we'll play
right, perfect,
we'll play the outro music. Oh, the wheels are off right now. Okay. All right, I'm gonna mute you so you don't burp in the middle of this. Sound good?
Great. I won't fart. I won't fart either.
Appreciate it. All right. Hey, guys, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Please, when you download, listen to this podcast, subscribe to us, follow us, like us, and leave a review. I see most. I check the stats every day. I'm an addict here to see who's following us, where they're following us from. But please leave a review, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We just love to see that stuff. So please feel free, leave reviews. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. Sounds like in the coming future, we'll have Weed back on here and we'll be talking about evaluations. Have a great night and we will see you later.
Top 3.
You like it?
Yeah, I did. I enjoyed it.
Why'd you?
It was fun.